New York City, September 10th, 2001. The world sleeps peacefully, believing it has everything under control. But somewhere, a man wakes before the chaos. He turns on an old recorder, and a raspy voice cuts through the silence of the early morning.
Tomorrow, everything truly changes.
The next day, the impossible happens. 2 towers fall, thousands of lives are erased, and among the ashes, a forgotten tape is found, containing words recorded before the tragedy. Words that describe, with terrifying accuracy, what was about to happen. Coincidence, prophecy, or something that defies time itself? What if time tried to warn us, and we simply didn't listen? 9/11, the man who warned America before the attacks. The tapes, buried by history. A city, asleep in its own confidence, awakens to a day that should never have existed. It happens tomorrow. Tomorrow at 8:46. The sky will be torn apart. Who recorded this message? And why has no one ever heard it before? The answer seems to be hidden within the sound waves themselves. When amplified, they show something strange. Rhythmic interference, pulses like a heartbeat. It's not just noise. It's as if time itself recorded the pain before the event even happened. The tape becomes an impossible witness, an echo from a future yet to unfold. What if time tried to warn us, and we just didn't listen? It was an ordinary Monday. The papers talked of the stock market, sports, politics. The New York sky was clear, traffic flowed, and no one imagined it would be the last day of an era. The sound of radios in the bakeries, the smell of fresh coffee, the laughter in the offices. Everything seemed in sync, as if the world itself were breathing in peace. But beneath this apparent tranquility, something was wrong. A silent, almost imperceptible energy moved through the air, as if time itself had stopped for a moment to watch what was about to happen. Amidst this perfect routine, one man walked alone, holding a small tape recorder. His gaze was distant, almost vacant. He spoke softly, reciting numbers, coordinates, times. No one noticed him. He was just another face lost in the crowd. Time is repeating itself, he says, and no one sees it. Researchers, years later, would analyze these recordings and claim they couldn't have been made after the attacks. The recording date was correct, the content impossible. The voice spoke of planes, of the exact time of impact, of the smoke covering Manhattan. It's as if you were watching from another point in time, a physicist might say. But this isn't a prediction, it's a memory. What if the real collapse didn't begin when the towers fell, but when time tried to warn us and no one believed? Years after the attack, among forgotten files in an FBI basement, a tape is rediscovered. The label is simple: September 10th, 2001. At first, it seems like just one of thousands of archived recordings. But when played, the initial silence is broken by an unmistakable sound. The sound of airplanes cutting through the air, followed by a tired, almost resigned voice. I try to change it, but they never listen. The agent who hears it for the first time feels his body tremble. Every word spoken coincides with events that would only become real the next day. Most unsettling, the tape was forensically examined. No cuts, no edits, no possibility of manipulation. The audio describes details that weren't available to anyone. The exact time of the first impact, the trajectory of the flights, even the gradual collapse of the towers. The tone of the voice isn't one of alarm, but of anticipated mourning, as if the speaker had already seen the tragedy many times, and each repetition left him more tired. The experts try to find an explanation. They attribute it to coincidence, editing tricks, even radio interference, but nothing holds up. The metadata confirms. The recording is real and was made before September 11th. As the investigation progresses, other enigmas emerge. The tape's sound signature shows peaks and frequencies that don't correspond to any common human voice. An acoustics expert claims the wave pattern indicates something more, a temporal distortion. It's as if the recording captured not just the sound, but a memory, a resonance at time itself trying to manifest. This voice isn't just talking about the future, he says. It's crossing through it. Reports begin to leak. Newspapers hint at the existence of a man from a lost time. Public opinion's divided. Some call him a visionary, others a charlatan. But the doubt remains. If he knew, why didn't he stop it? Or worse, did he try and time silenced him? Between each question, an unsettling feeling grows. Maybe destiny can't be changed, only announced. An almost imperceptible detail appears in the corner of the tape. The handwritten date mark, different from the label's writing. September 10th, 2001. Second attempt. The investigation begins to revolve around a simple question. Who was the man on the cape? The records point to a name, but they soon disappear, as if someone had erased every trace of his existence. No address, no relatives, no recent photos. It's as if time itself had swallowed his identity. However, one clue survives. An ID card dated 1985, belonging to a man with the same face, the same voice. The problem is that he appeared to be the same age as in the images recorded 20 years later. Researchers try to cross-reference data. They find portraits in different places in distant decades. 1963, 1977, 1999. In all of them, the same gaze, the same suit, the same expression as someone who knows too much. A CIA analyst, upon seeing the photos, comments, "It's not that he doesn't have a past, it's that he has too much of a past." The paradox forms, and the story begins to leave the realm of investigation to enter the territory of the impossible. Meanwhile, witnesses report strange encounters. A woman in Boston says she spoke with him days before the attacks. He seemed confused, repeatedly asking what year it was. 2001, she replied. He fell silent and murmured, "Then it's not over yet." Others claim to have seen him near an abandoned radio station, the same one where years later part of the recording would be found. But when they went after him, the place was empty. No sign, no record of entry or exit. The investigation begins to be suffocated by coincidences. Files disappear from government computers. Agents involved report system failures and memory lapses. One of them writes in his diary, "It's as if time itself is trying to protect itself." The idea that the man might not belong to our timeline ceases to be science fiction and starts to seem like a plausible explanation. If time is an organism, perhaps it eliminates everything that tries to interfere with its course. What if the man on the tape hadn't come from the future, but from a forgotten past, condemned to relive the same days in search of an outcome that never changes? As the story spreads, the case passes from the hands of the police to the universities. Scientists and theorists begin to be divided. Some claim that everything could be explained by coincidence and chance. Others, however, perceive something between the lines of the tape that goes beyond any known model. The physicist, Dr. Alan Kruger, a specialist in quantum mechanics, proposes a disturbing hypothesis. The man didn't predict September 11th. He remembered it. In secret conferences, Kruger describes the phenomenon as reverse temporal memory, a collapse of the line of causality where the effect precedes the cause. If this is real, then time isn't linear. It's a spiral, and someone, at some point, found the breach between its cycles. Other scholars go even further. A team of neuroscientists analyzes the man's vocal pattern and detects brain variations impossible for ordinary humans. The voice, they say, shows a neuronal rhythm compatible with altered states of consciousness, similar to those observed in people who have had near-death experiences. You may have crossed the threshold between life and time, a researcher states. Perhaps what we hear isn't just a warning, but an attempt to remember who he is. People begin to see him not as a prophet, but as someone trapped between dimensions. Meanwhile, a group of theologians revisits ancient scriptures, trying to find parallels. In the book of Ecclesiastes, there is a passage that says, "What has been, will be. What has been done, will be done again." For some, the man on the tape is the modern proof for this sentence, an echo of eternity amidst human chaos. But others see him as a dangerous anomaly, a rupture that threatens the balance between the divine and the scientific. Doubt becomes the new terror. If time can be remembered before it happens, does free will truly exist? Amid the debate, a decisive discovery emerges. An audio decoding software reveals a second, hidden level on the tape. When played in reverse frequency, a deep sound appears. Beats, as if from a heart. The analysis shows that the pulses follow the same rhythm as human brainwaves during deep sleep. It's as if time itself were dreaming. What if all of reality is merely the dream of something greater, and the man was simply a human who woke up before the rest of the world? It's not a prediction, it's a memory. Then it always comes back. During a final analysis of the recording, a sound engineer detects something everyone else had missed. Among the noise on the tape, there's a mathematical pattern, exact repetitions, timed pauses, intervals that form a logical, almost biological structure. When translated into binary code, a spectrogram appears, revealing a shape similar to a living spiral. It's as if time itself were trying to communicate. When the pattern's reversed, an older voice emerges, muffled but unmistakable. It's the same man's voice, decades later. You can't change it, you can only warn. The revelation changes everything. The story is no longer about a prophetic warning. It becomes the testimony of someone trapped in an endless cycle. Scientists call the phenomenon a recurring temporal reign, an anomaly where consciousness and reality overlap. The man would be a kind of biological messenger, condemned to relive the same events in different timelines, trying to alter a destiny that is already written. The theory is so absurd it borders on madness, but there's too much evidence to be ignored. In laboratories, specialists discover that the same sound pattern from the tape appears in other historical records of catastrophes: the Chernobyl explosion, the Challenger disaster, even radio broadcasts during past wars. The same code, the same signature. And what if time isn't a line, but an organism that regenerates itself after every trauma? Each catastrophic event would be a form of reset, a natural reflex of balance. And the man? He would be the symptom of a failure, a fragment of memory that insists on surviving the cycle. Perhaps he isn't trying to warn us, but asking to be forgotten. This idea completely changes the perception of history. The tragedy of September 11th is no longer just human. It becomes part of a cosmic process that no one understands. As the data accumulates, scientists realize something even more frightening. The cycle repeats every 28 years. The same patterns, the same interference, the same voices. The mathematical prediction indicates that the next temporal memory collapse will occur in 2029. Coincidence? Or time preparing another warning? The recorder is left on a table, running on its own. The tape spins. The sound reverses. And for the first time, the voice doesn't come from within it, but from outside. Are you hearing me now, aren't you? The man asks. For a moment, it seems he's speaking directly to us from the other side of time. After the discovery of the code on the tape, the case transforms into something that not even the government can control. The files begin to disappear mysteriously. Entire servers at the FBI and NASA are corrupted, and physical reports evaporate from safes that were never breached. The agents who worked on the case report recurring dreams of the same man. He appears in a subway station, staring at him in silence before disappearing into the steam from the tracks. One of the investigators writes in his final report, "This isn't an investigation, it's a mirror, and the more we look, the more the mirror looks back at us." From then on, sanity begins to crumble. Researchers contradict each other, memories are erased, interviews disappear from the original tapes. A reporter investigating the case gets into a car accident and dies at the exact minute one of the copies of the recording is deleted. Coincidence or temporal synchronization? The doubt is what drives you mad. Dates stop making sense, days repeat themselves, emails arrive before they're sent, clocks freeze at the same time. It's as if time itself has begun to defend itself, eliminating any attempt to understand what really happened. Amid the chaos, a single image emerges from a low-resolution security camera. Okay? September 11th, 7:59 a.m. 47 minutes before the first impact. A man is standing in front of the World Trade Center, his head slightly tilted, his hands in his pockets. The face, despite the graininess, is unmistakable. It's him, the man from the tape. He watches the sky, motionless, as if he already knew what would come next. A second later, the recording plots. The tape, when played again, reveals another detail. The clock in the background doesn't show 2001, but 2029. The experts can't explain it. Some say it's a processing error. Others swear it's an interference between timelines. But there's something more subtle, a collective feeling that the boundary between past and future has already dissolved. The city continues its course, oblivious to what is about to be repeated. And as the authorities try to erase the evidence, the narrative gives way to silence, the kind of silence that precedes the inevitable. Every attempt to understand time ends at the same point, when he starts to watch us. Buildings reflecting the sun, people crossing the streets. Everything seems normal, but there's something different. A sense of deja vu, as if we're watching the repetition of a day that has already happened. And maybe we are. The recorder reappears, now on a lab bench. The tape plays on its own. The clock shows exactly 8:46. The sound of a plane cuts through the air. And before the impact, a voice emerges. Calm, resigned. "We're back!" The laboratory is empty. The lights flicker. In the center, an old television connected to a VHS tape player begins to display a recording no one remembers making. The image is grainy, the audio's faulty, but the figure before the camera is clear. It's him, the man from the tape. The aged face, the deep-set eyes, the expression of someone who carries centuries of frustrated attempts. He takes a deep breath before speaking. "I'm not a prophet. I'm not a scientist. I'm just a mistake that time couldn't erase." The silence that follows his words is almost physical, as if even the air hesitated to continue existing. He explains that it all started a long time ago, maybe even before his first memory. With each cycle, he wakes up one day before a major collapse. He tries to warn, tries to change, but the result's always the same. You call it history, he says, but for me, it's repetition. He shows old notes, diagrams, dates, newspaper clippings that shouldn't exist yet. Time is an animal. I'm just the sound it makes when it tries to escape. The phrase echoes in the room. It's at this moment that the concept of reality begins to fragment. The camera shakes. He continues. Every time I try to warn, something pulls me back. Sometimes I wake up before Hiroshima, sometimes before Chernobyl. But the worst part isn't seeing, it's remembering. I remember every fall, every scream, every silence after. He stares into the lens with tired eyes, almost pleading. You think time heals? But it doesn't heal. It repeats. The words sound like a lament and at the same time a confession. The man isn't a witness to an event. He is a prisoner of his own eternity. Suddenly, the image begins to distort. The voice falters, multiplying into overlapping echoes. You need to listen. It's not the end. It's the beginning all over again. The laboratory monitors go dark one by one, leaving only the continuous sound of a tape being rewound. When the image returns, he's no longer there. Only the empty chair, swinging slowly, and the recorder still on. The red light blinks. A new recording begins. What if time wasn't a blind mechanism, but a moral mirror, where every human act reverberates until we learn what we need to understand? Maybe man isn't trapped in a cycle, but we are. And he, tired of shouting to the past, just listens to us now, waiting for us to finally hear. After the man's disappearance, the video becomes the only tangible trace of something that shouldn't exist. The authorities try to silence the case, claiming it's all just an elaborate hoax. But the image is spreaded. Thousands of people around the world begin to report identical dreams. Planes, smoke, clocks stopping at the same time. It's as if the collective memory of humanity had been touched by that warning. Time somehow reacted. The experts call it chronopsychic resonance. The moment when memory and reality merge. But the people feel something else, guilt. A strange feeling that we ignored something that had been trying to warn us all along. Days before the tragedy, people went on with their lives, smiling, running, loving, all believing that tomorrow was guaranteed. They didn't know they were inside a repetition. The question is no longer what happened, but what we are letting happen again. Theorists begin to propose a bold idea. Time may not be linear, but moral. Each catastrophe would be the reflection of a collective choice, a failure that returns until it is corrected. The man on the tape then wouldn't be a traveler, but a human reflection, the echo, a universal regret. So time doesn't punish, it teaches. And with each repetition, it watches us, waiting for the moment we finally act differently. Suddenly, the images slow down. The sound of clocks reverses course, the hands turn backward, the days begin to dawn again. A child looks at the sky, a woman closes a window, a plane crosses the horizon. Everything repeats, but in a different way, slower, more conscious, as if the universe itself were asking for a pause to breathe. The voice returns, whispering, "What if the warning wasn't to prevent the past, but to awaken the present?" All time is a mirror, and the reflection depends on who is looking. The final images show the towers reflected in the man's eyes. Not in 2001, but on a future, still uncertain date. The clock reads September 10th again. The cycle's about to restart, but maybe this time someone will listen. Again, the image trembles as if time, now aware of being watched, were trying to hide. A voice emerges, hoarser, more distant, as if crossing through decades. If you're hearing this, the cycle has begun again. The screen shows a newly discovered file dated September 10th, 2029. The handwriting's the same, the tape's identical, and the content a new warning. The difference is that now no one is trapped. The man didn't disappear. He is simply where time lets him rest between warnings. Meanwhile, the world continues on the same course. Crowded streets, faces lit by screens, people trapped in the same old routine. Have we learned anything? Or have we just swapped the symbols of our distraction? The images appear in flashes. Hiroshima, a city reduced to dust. Chernobyl, the radioactive heart pulsing with smoke. New York, covered by a veil of smoke and astonishment. It's as if each catastrophe were a chapter in the same book that humanity insists on ignoring. With each image, the same sound of a spinning tape, the same frequency pattern, like the world's heart beating before the collapse. Suddenly, the tape cuts off, the audio disappears, and the silence becomes unbearable. It is in this void that his voice reappears, clearer than ever. Now look for me. Look for the moment when it all begins again. The audience feels the weight of the phrase, a warning and a hope at the same time. Perhaps the man never tried to prevent the future. Maybe his mission was simply to remind humanity that time doesn't restart. It just returns what we've forgotten to learn. The following images show a new clock. It reads exactly 8:46, but the numbers don't advance. The camera moves closer to the recorder. The red light turns on. A final whisper echoes, almost inaudible. It is happening again. The man who warned America. The loop never ended. Everything we live is a memory. The past is not behind us. It breathes inside of us. These words sound like an echo that pierces the hearts of us all. Because deep down, the story of the man who warned America is not about prophecy. It is about human blindness in the face of the signs that repeat every day. The silent warnings that the world sends us and that we choose to ignore. Time does not punish, it repeats. Every tragedy is a mirror that reflects our own indifference back at us. And so we realize that the tape was never just about September 11th. It was about all the times humanity received a warning and moved on as if nothing had happened. The man on the tape, after all, represents all of us. Trapped between the desire to change and the inability to listen. He warned us, but what did we do with the warning? And what if the real collapse is not what happens on the outside, but what we let happen inside of us? Time does not want to be understood. It wants to be remembered. The light goes out, the sound of the clock returns. And so the story of the man on the tape ends. But the cycle, as always, begins again the moment someone presses play.